Welcome to another Rooster Talk, where we get an update from the companies on the ASX and the guys who run it. Here we are in Sydney, and today I've got Matador Mining, and I've got a dual guest. I've got Ian Murray and the new CEO, Sam Pazuki. And look, Matador's sort of introducing new CEO to the game. So, Ian, maybe you could start off and tell us about it.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, and appreciate you having us here to introduce Sam to the Australian and international audience. Sam is well known to a lot of investors because he comes to us from Oceania Gold, where he's been for the last 10 years. Sam is based in Toronto, so the North American market knows him well. The UK and European market knows him well, and institutions in Australia know him well. So what we've been doing this week is, and last week and this week, is introducing Sam to the brokers in Australia together with the retail investors. We had a retail investor lunch in Perth last week. We had a retail investor lunch in Melbourne earlier this week, and we've got another retail investor lunch later this week in Sydney.
Okay. Oh, it makes sense, I guess. Your project is in Canada, and Sam is based there. Look, Sam, your time on the limelight here. Can you give us your spiel on who you are and your views on Matador?
Yeah, no, it's great to be here today back in Sydney, and first time back in Australia after 3 years, so it's good to see travel after the pandemic. And great to just be here, part of a great name with Matador Mining. As Ian said, I've had 10 years of experience here with Oceania Gold. Global company with an ASX, TSX listing, so dual listed company. Started off in investor relations and sort of grew into the strategy, M&A, and investor relations portfolio for the company. And Oceania had some very good success and very strong shareholders, global shareholders, heavy focus in North America as well as Europe. My background is I'm an engineer. That's what I graduated from years ago now. And started my career off in the oil and gas industry. Worked with one of the largest companies in Canada, I think the largest oil and gas pipeline company that branched out into renewable energy, was part of a team that was looking to grow a new business for the company before moving on to consulting, which then led to my opportunity in the mining industry and with Oceania specifically. So it's a career that's focused heavily on commercial, looking in strategy, M&A, and more recently investor relations. Okay. And so last year I received a phone call about an opportunity with Matador Mining. I'd heard about Matador Mining as one of my former bosses had moved over there as a director. I quickly looked at who was behind the story, because for me to make a change, I wanted to be part of something that's of substance, a real project with real opportunity to create value, not just for stakeholders where the project is, but also for shareholders, given my focus has heavily been on shareholder wealth creation. Mm-hmm. And so I saw that Ian Murray was the chairman of Matador. I had never met Ian before, but his reputation preceded him with the success that he's had at Gold Road. Gold Road was a company that a lot of people had sort of followed, especially mid-tier producers looking for growth. And so although I didn't have the privilege of having met Ian prior to that, I felt like I already knew him and saw his journey through that story. Mick Wilkes is the Oceania executive that I worked for. Nikki Atchedbell I'd known for 10 years, initially as an investor, but also just as a professional within the mining industry. And then Justin Osborne I didn't know at all. It took 1 or 2 phone calls to realize that Justin is highly regarded in the mining industry, one of the top exploration geologists on the planet, and obviously behind the Gold Road success. So that for me was a big box ticking exercise, that the team behind this story was one of the best, and frankly one of the best boards I've seen for a junior exploration company. And then doing a deeper dive in terms of the opportunity and the project itself. Newfoundland is very topical, especially in Canada. There's been a lot of focus, a lot of attention, and certainly a lot of activity on the island in Newfoundland. So that piqued my interest as well. And doing a deeper dive and looking at what the potential was for Matador, it is one of only 4 companies with an existing resource and sitting with one of the largest land tenements or land packages on the island, on the same structure as a 5 million ounce deposit in Marathon Gold. So from a neurology perspective, again, the opportunity was quite interesting. And as I went through that process with the board, with Ian, meeting others on the team, we've got some very strong exploration geologists in Warren Potma, a very strong management team, and a very strong team on the ground. It ticked a lot of boxes, and the opportunity, as from a geological perspective, was highly enticing. So from my perspective, I wasn't going to make a move from Oceania Gold into just anything. It had to be something that had a real potential of becoming something special. Sort of what the analogy that I have is Gold Road. So to find something similar to that Gold Road story and the success they had there.
It's interesting because when I look at your, we met in Perth and we had a coffee and talked, and the transition from Ian to yourself, to me seems very aligned in the sense that what you just said then was that Gold Road this is to me, and I've expressed it to Ian, this is like Gold Road number 2 because you've got that long strike length, you've got this zoned area. You've got the extensive strike that you've got there, and it's a bit of a exploration here, and then it looks like you're just going to drill and create numbers, I guess, in some ways. But so, Ian, how has the market transition been for you guys? I mean, the Ian Murray handing over the reins to Sam.
Yeah, it's actually been very, very good. So starting off with in Canada, I went across to Canada a month ago. Went through Vancouver and then Toronto to meet with investors over there. Obviously, with Sam joining us, there are a lot more investors that are now taking meetings. So certainly a lot more doors opening up for Matador in North America and Canada. So that's been great. Everybody's welcoming Sam joining us. There's 75 companies doing something on the island of Newfoundland from Canada, one ASX company. But our story is not well known in North America. So having Sam, who's well known over there, joining us, people are saying, oh, what is Matador? Can we learn more about it? So that's the North American side, which is fantastic. From an Australian side, some of our investors have never met Sam before, but as I mentioned last week and this week, we've been introducing Sam and having those meetings, and everybody's very comfortable with Sam's approach to the tenements, the exploration, Sam's contacts in North America, the M&A opportunities that Sam could bring to Matador as well. So it's actually going down very well. We now have a few days of meetings in Sydney where we'll introduce Sam to even more investors and potential new brokers as well.
Okay. Look, Sam, I mean, I know Oceania because as we spoke, I had a project down in New Zealand, and Oceania is a big part of the thing, and they had, I think, a big project in the Philippines as well. So they're more of a minor kind of mentality. I don't think they have that much exploration. So transitioning yourself from there to Matador, who is effectively an explorer at stage, I have my opinions. I think it's a producer to be. But so how do you see that transition? How are you handling it, or how's your thinking? Is there any big change, or is this a part of the process?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, I've been in the mining industry now for over a decade, and from a Oceania perspective, yes, it's a producing company, but with very good exploration potential as well, and worked very closely with the exploration geos on what those opportunities were. But I'm an engineer. I'm not a geologist, and I wouldn't profess to be anywhere close to being an expert. But I don't need to be an expert. The one thing that really attracted me to Matador under Ian's leadership is it has a very strong foundation already. So I'm coming into a story with a very solid base, whether it's internal or external. It has a very solid base, and again, the prospectivity of the land package that we have in Newfoundland. So as Oceania, we looked at a number of opportunities from an M&A perspective, which went from any stage of the life cycle through to mergers of equals, etc. So across on exploration opportunities in prolific jurisdictions, we looked at it all. And for me personally, I've always been a builder. I've always gone into things where it's looking to start from scratch and build something. So it was a new business at Enbridge, where they were looking to build a renewable energy platform or a green energy platform. shifted over to Ernst & Young, where they were looking to build a new practice called climate change and sustainability. So I was part of that growth. And then when I joined Oceania, it was, as you mentioned, predominantly a New Zealand producer with 2 operations, one in the Philippines. But they had a vision to grow the business on the back of the success, particularly in the Philippines with the build out there, and grow the business in North America. And that's what I was a part of. It was part of that growth platform for the companies that I've worked for. So for me, given I'm not an expert in geology, there are a lot of experts in geology at Matador. Again, on the board, we've got Justin and Nikki are both geologists. Nikki has a PhD in geology, but more closer to the ground, Warren Potma is our chief geologist. And having gotten to know Warren over the last couple of weeks or so, I think he's a fantastic geologist who's had significant success globally. So I'm going to be leaning on Warren and leveraging his expertise and his experience to make those major million-ounce gold discoveries. Then Warren has done a fantastic job to assemble a team on the ground in Newfoundland, which is where the project is, with Crispin Pike as our VP Discovery, to assemble a team of geologists to again, go out and systematically explore, systematically look for million-ounce deposits on this strike length, 120 kilometers of continuous strike on the multi-million-ounce structure that exists today. So it's really working with the team to enable a lot of that good work to continue and look for opportunities to, again, make those big discoveries.
And in my mind, following on what you're saying in terms of growth and the next step for Matador, in my mind, it's like, rightly or wrong, I said, it's a case of Matador just drilling and getting ounces and building. But in all aspect, you got 120 kilometers strike. Exploration to me is the key component here, because there's lots more to discover. Mm-hmm. Do you see that as the fruit, or if I use the right analogy, of Matador for investors, right? When investors look at Matador, do they see, look, there's actually more to come than this, because your market cap's 52 million. I can see a lot more growth in there, as we know, like no crystal ball conversation here. But how do you see the growth in Matador? What's the prize?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, again, we're positioned well to deliver on that prize. We've got 837,000 ounces of gold in resource. So I'm coming in with an existing resource, which underpins the market cap. The work that's over the last couple of years has been drilling and exploring around that existing resource. So I'll call it brownfields exploration, if you will. So looking to grow that existing resource around Central, Window Glass Hill, and the deposits that make up the current resource. And so looking at the opportunity in the early stages and going through the process with the board, having been appointed CEO, learning more about the project and the opportunity and the potential, more recently looking at some data with respect to the drilling, but also some of the work they've done from a greenfields perspective, I see the opportunity being more greenfields potential. The gold that's there in resource and the drilling that they've done over the last year will increase the resource incrementally. And we can continue spending and investing capital to grow that resource incrementally. Or we can look at the potential of the belt that we're sitting on, look at, utilize the data that we have, whether it's the magnetic survey that was done, some geochem sampling that was done. We just published some numbers last week on malachite. I see that being the potential. And so what I've recommended to Ian and to the board is really, let's go out. Let's go look for the elephants along this 120 kilometer continuous strike on the multi-million ounce structure. Let's focus on that. We're not going to abandon a brownfield strategy. We'll continue to look for targets, and we've got plenty of targets closer to where the existing resource is. But I think the real potential here is greenfields. I think it is going to malachite, identifying specific targets to drill, and again, looking for the big multi-million ounce deposits that we believe exist in this system, in addition to what Marathon Gold has. And then we've got another project further afield called Hermitage, which has some pretty exciting data for historical data that came through some work that was done by some previous majors like Inco and Teck and Falconbridge. So we were successful in staking that ground, and I'm keen, especially when I was going through the board recruitment process, I mentioned this, keen to actually go there and see what we have, because it's on the Hermitage flexure, which is the same structure as Newfound Gold, except it has a different orientation. And then what's interesting is that when you look at our 120 kilometer strike package of the Cape Ray shear, one thing geos have told me is that structural bends are good. That's where we should be looking for gold. So I've already encouraged Warren to be looking at these structural bends. Malachite is one of them. But there's another significant one further to the northeast on our tenement package. And what's interesting with this structural bend is that there's a convergence of the Cape Ray shear and the Hermitage flexure. And again, we're sitting on the tenement package at that junction. So again, I'm not a geologist, but as an engineer, the geos have told me bends are good, multiple structures are good. And here is another target where we've got the convergence of the two largest gold structures on the island at a major structural bend. So this is what I'm meaning when I say we've got to look from a more greenfields potential. And you'd mentioned Gold Road, and I've mentioned it to Ian a few times. I mean, Gold Road had they were at a similar junction where they were exploring around the brownfields. They had a brownfields exploration strategy focused on brownfields drilling around an existing resource. And Ian and the team, they continued on that path, but then they took a pause to see what is the potential of the belt that they were sitting on. And so they went through a similar process that we've recently gone through in terms of target generation, utilizing the data that you do have. And they decided to identify priority targets. And the first one, lucky for them, that they went to was Gruyere. And so, again, this feels a lot like Gold Road, and I dare to say this is Gold Road 2.0.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree more because I did terribly in structural geology in university, and turns out when you go to work, structure is the most important thing that you need to know. And I've learned, bends are good, and that's where and splays of that. So when you get splays of those things, it becomes just one big massive place where less pressure and things come up. And most of this kind of conversation is about these kind of joints. And I think in our last coffee with Samso, we talked about these kind of things, and it's the right strategy. I guess you've explained it perfectly there.
I think just to add to that as well too. I mean, I think what shareholders are looking for, again, are the big discoveries. If you look at Marathon Gold even, and what we have is more analogous to Marathon Gold than anything else really at the island, as we know it thus far. And when you look at Marathon Gold's success, I mean, they're basically the most advanced project now on the island, having received their provincial approvals, waiting for the federal approval to come to be able to then go into development. But they have a 4.8 million ounce resource that continues to grow. And if you look at their history, they had a resource of about 500,000 ounces of gold, sat there for a couple years, and then they started to step out and look for opportunities further away from where they were previously drilling. And that's when they started tagging into some of these larger multi-million ounce deposits that form the Marathon Gold or Valentine Lake property. So this is what we're looking to do now going forward. So it's really a pivot of the strategy from a brownfields exploration to a more greenfields exploration. And that's what I believe shareholders are looking for.
Oh, I think so. Look, going back to Hermitage, people go out there and do your own research, but you'll see that the presence of, good volumes of antimony is always associated with decent gold occurrence. And you can see in many projects out there that they seem to go hand in hand. Look, guys, it's a great conversation. I think you're as guests new to this the company and things like that. Just as a quick update for guys out there, since we last spoke, anything changed, learned or changed since then?
Well, I think the big standout for us has been malachite. So 15 kilometers long, 4 kilometers across, a massive footprint area, bigger than what Marathon have with their entire Valentine Lake system, which is 5 million ounces and growing. So if you go back in time, second quarter last year, we flew Aeromag. Third quarter last year, we got the data and the geo started analysing it and coming up with targets. They saw the bend in that structure at Malachite, the cross-cutting structures, secondary, tertiary structures, as we spoke about, where there's less pressure, where gold tends to come out of solution and get trapped. We've got all the right structures there. Fourth quarter last year, the team went out and did a manual program, over 1,300 samples taken. We're now getting that data back, and we're seeing very good footprints of gold in soils. Good collection of gold grains, up to 716 gold grains in one 12 kilogram sample, which is equivalent of 1.5 to 2 gram per ton in soils. Most of those gold grains, 607 out of the 716, are pristine, which means that they've traveled for less than 100 meters from their source. We've got 9 different anomalies in this area identified so far. We've only got 2/3 of the samples back. We're waiting for the final 1/3. But certainly in terms of what Sam spoke about, the pivot strategy and focusing more on the greenfields, this is a large footprint area. It's got the right structures. We now confirm that there's gold in the elevated gold in the soils in 9 different large footprint areas. And let's just do that work as quickly as we can to get ready to drill them.
Yeah, sounds good. So what's Ian going to do now? He's got nothing else to do?
No, I'm chairman. I'm going to work closely with Sam. Obviously, Sam's executive. He runs the company and the team. But I'll be very much involved to make sure that there's a very smooth transition with Sam. Any questions he has, I certainly will be going across and joining Sam at the conferences in North America in September, second half of this year. We've got the 2 big conferences there for companies of Matador size. So the Precious Metal Summit at Beaver Creek and the Denver Gold Show in Colorado, in Colorado Springs. They're the 2 big ones, and obviously kicking off our exploration program probably from June, the summer program, which will carry on all the way through to November. So working closely with Sam, heading across there in the second half of the year, but also with Sam doing the heavy lifting as executive, freeing me up to do more investor relations, in Australia, which has been neglected over the last 2 years, combination of COVID and with me travelling and with Western Australian laws, not being able to come back into WA for a 6-month period.
There's an election coming up. You shouldn't be saying all these things. It's very bad.
It's a federal election, not a state
yes,
one.
That's true. That's true. That's true. You know well. You're a wise man. Look, jokes aside. Look, Sam, I always end these shows with that last bit where the investors out there and they're either keen to hang on to your stock, had enough, keen to look at buying more. What's that shameless pitch to them to say, hang in there, buy Matador?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's a great question, and it's a great opportunity. I think, especially right now, we're at a very important junction. Again, I'm coming in inheriting a very strong foundation that Ian and the team have built. Strong team, strong prospectivity. And prospectivity, in this name of the game, being an early stage exploration company, is the key to success. We're on an island. We're in a top tier jurisdiction. I'll point out probably one of the last final frontiers of top jurisdictions where you can get things permitted and you can advance things along into production. So we're in the right setting. We've got the right geological structures. We've got a large land package on those geological structures. And we've got the right team to go out and look for sizable deposits. A lot of people, including myself, when you think about 120 kilometers of strike, it's just numbers on a paper. But I encourage everyone to think about where you are today and think about where 120 kilometers is. I mean, that's an extensive area in which we've got this opportunity to go out and find large deposits. So shareholders are going to want to see results. I think we are, especially with what Ian just said with Malachite, we are well positioned to go out and, again, properly explore and systematically explore along this 120 kilometers belt, plus the Hermitage project, to go and find these multi-million ounce deposits. I will be out there talking to shareholders, as would Ian and Warren and the team, because they are the owners of the business, and we will be focused on creating value for owners of the business. And we ourselves are owners of the business as well, too.
Okay. Oh, fantastic, Sam. Look forward to more news, and I'm glad got you guys on Coffee with Samso at 52 million, because when you're at 5 billion, it's a bit hard to get you guys on the couch. But look, thank you, and let's look forward to more conversations.
Thank you.